So I'm going to talk about three main topics under content standards. One is our initial studies to align CASAS to the college and career readiness standards. The next is our revised reading content standards, the CASAS reading ones, and then some studies we've done for the new maths and reading series. So this you've seen before, but just to refresh your memories, when in 2010, when the CCSS came out, that is the Common Core State Standards came out, we did some studies to see how our standards related to those standards, and we found a fairly strong alignment. Then in 2013, when the Office of Career Technical and Adult Education came out with the College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education, we again did another study to see how our standards aligned with those, and again, a strong alignment. Luckily, also, at the time that in 2013, when these College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education were published, we were just at a point when we were finalizing the NEDP competencies, so we were able to incorporate the CCR standards into NEDP. So they are very strongly aligned. NEDP standards, competencies are very strongly aligned to the CCRS. Now, the CASAS reading content standards, and that's how we've always referred to them, have been revised pretty significantly. We've combined, reduced, renamed, reorganized both the categories overall and the standards themselves. So we went from 9 to 5 categories, and we went from 125 to, actually I should have changed, that's 50 standards. We added some standards from the CCRS that were not there in the previous version. So now we have all of the CCRS standards in the areas of English language arts, reading foundations, and language referenced at least once in our revised CASAS reading standards. And so also another goal of this revision of our CASAS reading standards was to have a better alignment of the reading standards to the new assessments and the reporting categories for the new assessments. So it's all been streamlined and should be a much easier document to use, and it is now ready to roll with the new series. There is a pretty extensive introduction in here, which we're not going to go through right now, but I do encourage you to read it because it explains about the background, a lot more about what was changed. Also, it talks about how it's organized and what's to come. But basically, these are the new categories. We always had something more or less called foundational literacy, and that continues to be there. We have always had standards in our reading content standards for language and vocabulary, but we pulled them together into one category, which is the second category. And that relates in the CCRS to both the language area, the language anchor standards in the CCRS, as well as if you're familiar with the CCRS, R4, reading 4 would be in there as well. Category 3, we've renamed reading comprehension skills. And here we have put all of the reading standards that are at a DOK1. That is literal comprehension, finding information. And there are standards for both informational and literary text in this category. One thing we've done that wasn't there before is we've incorporated the CASAS reading task areas into this category 3 because that's how our items are formatted in terms of, and I've put them all there in case you don't remember those task areas. The first one is forms, then charts and tables, text, or other formats like ads or labels, different kinds of displays. So those are now incorporated into the reading standards in this category called reading comprehension skills. And actually, what we noticed about the CCRS, College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education, is that levels A and B, there are 5 levels, A through E. Levels A and B are really almost all at DOK1, Depth of Knowledge Level 1. And that levels C, D, and E are at DOK2 or higher. So our fourth and fifth categories in the new CASAS reading standards are covering DOK2 and above. They also almost all relate to levels C, D, and E in the CCARS for adult ed standards. Category 4 is informational and literary text, and Category 5 is only literary text. So that's how we've organized it. If you have any questions, you can ask at any point, but, and we'll be having a work group later on where you'll be able to ask more in-depth questions about it. Is there any more about it? No. Okay. So one thing I do want to mention is that the document you have in your hands right now is one way that we are presenting these standards in terms of, if you open it up, I think to page, let's say, let's just go to page 11. And that way, you can see two things. You can see how the reading task areas are incorporated there in Category 3. And you can also see the layout, which is that we have on the left side the CASAS reading standard. We used RDG because in the CCRS they use R. So we thought that would be clearer not to have the same letter. So RDG, in this case, let's say 3.1, is the CASAS standard. And across from that is the CCRS reading anchor standard, R1. And it's showing the 5 levels A, B, C, D, E. So that's telling you at what levels that standard is aligned to the CCRS. Okay, so this is how this document is formatted and what it contains. Those of you who are familiar with our current reading content standards know that in the middle there are dots. And this document doesn't have dots yet. But we will be producing a version with dots. But we are waiting until we have the ESL standards from Octave, and then we'll put another version of this out with what we'll call Table 2. And there's a model of it at the end of the introduction. I think it's on page 7. Yeah. So page 7 shows at the top Table 1, which is how this document is formatted and contains the reference to the whole anchor standard on the right for CCRS and those which levels it aligns to. The table on the bottom, too, that's the one that's forthcoming. As soon as we get the standards for ELLs from Octave, we will create that table that will have both the ABE and the ELL levels indicated with dots. And then on the far right, there'll just be the anchor standard, not the full standard, written out. Okay? So that's your update on the reading standards. Let's carry on. We've done some studies to support the new reading series. Last year we had a national advisory group that looked at our items and gave us some great input about how it was aligning with the CCRS. And we took that to heart, did a lot of editing based on their input. That was very helpful. Last year at the Summer Institute, we had a reading focus group where we had another group of practitioners, reading practitioners and math actually, to do the same. And again, their input was very helpful. And this year we had a session this morning where we just looked at the standards, but on Thursday morning we will have another session asking expert ABE and ASC practitioners to look at the standards and look at our items, a sample of our items, and give us input about how they see them aligned. So some of you, I think you all received an invitation to those special sessions, but if you weren't sure if you were able to come and you are able to come now, please let me know. It's 9:30 to 1 on Thursday morning for that special focus group for reading. We're currently conducting a formal content alignment study in both reading and math, consisting of between 5 and 7 subject matter experts in ABE and ASE. to look at the items and tell us how they think they align to the CCRS. So that will be part of our submission to the NRS. It's a formal study of the alignment of the items to the CCRS. They also tell us if they think the items are appropriate for adult learners. So there are two questions we're asking them. How do they align to the CCRS, and are they appropriate for adults? We have conducted already some standard setting, and we're going to do a little more. Standard setting is a cut score study, and that's where we have to get a lot of subject matter experts together at once in a very intensive 2-day event where we use what's called the bookmark method of standard setting, which is very useful when you have multiple cut points, which we do for our many levels. And so during these 2 days, we do this remotely in conference calls. They independently rate, they come back together. Again, they do a final rating. And we use these judgments to determine the score ranges that you then see that are published for NRS. Okay, so that's how that comes about, and we're working on that now. Okay, I'm going to continue into this area called Assessment, Research, and Resources, looking at the new test series, some other studies, and also some resources. So let's go ahead. So I think you all know that by now. We are developing new reading and math series for 2017, aligned to the CCRS, reading and math. We will have both computer-based as well as paper-pencil versions for both reading and math, and all of the levels will be covered from beginning literacy to advanced. The CASAS competencies are still part of the mix because, of course, with WIOA, we are having more employment content than we might have otherwise, but there will still be health, community resources, consumer economics will all be there. And of course, the content standards now, we're talking CCRS as well as our CASAS reading standards that you just learned about. The reading task areas are still going to be there and reported on, as well as depth of knowledge. For every item, you'll be able to know the depth of knowledge for that item. Multiple choice, you know, we wish we could do otherwise, but in a way, but because of the constraints of adult education, it's really the only way we can proceed. We have one variation. We've always had comprehension items, but now we have sentence completion, and that makes it a little easier sometimes to express things simply. We have numbered lines in the text passages. We have then students, in order to cite evidence from the text, refer to those numbered lines in the test items. When we're testing vocabulary, there's underlined words to reference in the text. In the level A, we're going to have some photo prompts, which are colorful and really great for that level. And another basic theme of this new series is that we're trying as much as we possibly can to have multiple items related to one passage, which is less of a burden on the student, less test-taking time, so that especially when there are texts that are very complex, it's worth the effort for them to get into it, read it, and then have more items related to that text than just one or two. The math series also is measuring CASAS competencies still, so we're still firmly committed to practical, applied math. And the math content standards are the same as before. They were revised not too long ago, so they're up to date already. And the math series also is very, very strongly aligned to the CCRS math. The common standards categories that are included are the same ones, of course, that are in the CCRS for math. And as I said in a way, that these skills used in academic and employment settings are there, as well as academic life skills. The item types for math, there's a range of item types. Word problems, reading complexity, and cognitive load are consistent with the level-specific expectations. So again, it's just very strongly aligned to the CCRS. And that's what these content studies are doing, is to confirm that that's the case. There's simple to advanced calculation, traditional academic contexts that we really didn't have before so much, and situational scenarios that reflect real-world applications as well. We're looking to go with 40 to 50. We're going to not do 50 items. It took too long, but 40 to 45 is kind of where we are right now, for both reading and math, I should say. And now the online calculator is a new feature that we will have with a new series, but only for the items that require it. So it will just pop up as needed and then not be there if it's not appropriate for that item. The formulae are provided within the item so that way the student is not asked to remember the formula, but they can reference the formula to answer the question. And that keeps the assessment focused on the concepts and skills, but not on memorization. All right. This is the timeline. So we've been writing and field testing test items. We are still field testing math items, so if you know of any programs that would like to help us with that, we do still need help with field testing math. We are conducting research studies. We have been, as I mentioned earlier, and we are continuing to do that this year. October 1st is when we are planning to submit the series to NRS for review. Then, depending on how long that takes, which can be anywhere in our experience, the earliest we've ever heard is April. And the latest we've ever heard that's from an October 1st submission is August. So we don't know. And and of course we also don't know what they'll say. So if they come back and say the tests are approved and it's April, then who knows, maybe you'd be able to start using them in 2017. But if they come back later than that, then that won't be feasible, of course, for you to start using them. Also, if they come back with questions for us, then it will also take time for us to answer them. So 2017 is the earliest that you would see the test series approved, and it could be later. As far as ELLs are concerned, as I think you know, we only have the standards and the NRS Educational Functioning Level descriptors for ABE, ASE so far. That's all we have. So we are waiting for the ELL study to complete, and OCTAE has said that they're hoping to publish the ELL standards and descriptors in this September, which would be an incredible feat because they've only been going for about a year, less than a year, that project. But if they do publish them in September and they're final enough for us to work with them, we will start to work with them as soon as we get even a draft. But then we need to see how the ELL standards relate to the ABE, ASE standards, and we'll see to what extent the tests that we have developed for ABE, ASE will be usable for ESL. Because as you know, our reading tests have always been for both, and we hope that we can continue with that, but we first need to see the standards to see if that's going to be possible. Okay. Just to mention about the 980 listening series, I think you all know that it's been approved. That's now for about 2 years it's been approved. And right now, it is like all other tests. I really want to stress this, like all of the tests that are out there, life and work reading, all the math series that are approved, like all the current tests you're currently using, now the life and work listening 980 is on the same time frame as those tests, which is that they officially expire in February 2017. We expect that there will be a continuation of that, an extension of that date, because it seems well nigh impossible for there to be approved tests for you to use in March 2017. So basically that should get extended. If you happen to be using the 80 series, we're still supporting it. And I think you all know if you're using the 980 that it's available both in e-tests and in the CD versions. Amazingly, I would have to say, field tested 200,000, more than 200,000 adult learners in reading and math in this project. So we thank you all for your help with that, and it really has, the feedback that we got from agencies, even from students that we've looked at, has really helped us to shape the test series. As I mentioned, we still need more students for math. We want to thank you all. In your folder, there is a list of all of the agencies that have participated in field testing by state. And what we'd like to do right now is ask all of you if you are from an agency that participated, or if you are in a position where you helped to facilitate field testing, we consider that you're part of the CASAS field testing team. And we would please stand up if you are in that category. All right, now if you're not standing up, it's not too late. We really need your help. We have the summer studies that I mentioned that we really, really need help with. Here in your packet, there's this colorful green handout that tells you that phase 1 is nearing completion, as I said, but phase 2 are the 2 studies. Well, one I described. One is called a parallel form study, if you see in your handout on the back. That's where the same student has to take 2 parallel forms, let's say the Form 1 and Form 2 of Level C, for example, within a week. And the other kind of study is where we ask teachers to independently tell us whether students that have taken the CASAS test, without looking at the test scores, tell us what NRS level rather, they think the student is functioning at based on classroom observations. So if you have programs that can help with these studies, it will be in July and August, early August, mostly in July. We would like to have it all done in July if possible. Please let us know. And would our field testing recruiters please stand up? Karen, Kay, and Lynn are anxiously awaiting your responses, as I say, on the And any CASA staff member is you can tell. So we really hope that you can help us with these studies. This is the moment when we really, really need your help. You do have this other handout in your packet that is an overview of the new reading and math series. So that's something that if you'd like more of these, or you can send it around or use it for anyone in your state who asks about this. Oh, and here's the information to participate. It's also on the green flyer to contact for field testing. Okay, in your packet, if you could please take out the assessment policy guidelines. We put these out several years ago, but something came up that we felt it was important to clarify, and it's on page 19. So we reworded a little bit the language here to make it a little bit more straightforward, to say, to say reliability, that is test accuracy, has 2 major subcomponents, consistency and stability, and then in every CASAS test, the raw score, the number correct, converts to a scale score. Each scale score has an associated standard error of measurement, called SEM. CASAS establishes a range of accuracy for each test form. Okay, and the next line, this is the change. That the new wording is for scale scores exceeding the accurate range, that is, you may know them as the diamond scores, CASAS provides a usable conservative scale score estimate that may be reported for accountability purposes. If you look below, in the middle of the previous wording, it says, test administrators are encouraged to administer a next test. But we've changed it to, however, test administrators may administer a test at the next more difficult level to obtain a more accurate score. And the reason for this change is that we saw that in some states they were really over-interpreting our encouragement to retest. To the point that it became a policy that you must. So it's not must, it's you may. And that because the conservative estimate scores are there to be used. And they can be reported to NRS. So please do use them if that's what you think is appropriate. If you think a student is much lower and is really higher, that's for you to decide if you want to retest or not. You certainly can retest the student at a higher test level, but you do not necessarily have to. You can use the conservative estimate score.